Come on, bitch, let's go. Come on, get ready, bitches. You haven't seen nothing yet. Come on.
Valentino, Versace, Lamborghini, Bugatti. I got money to burn. I'm single and I'm naughty.
Come on.
Tiffany's, Cartier, Gucci on Marty.
Come on.
Break out your black card, boys. It's time to party.
Hi, you guys. So, oh goodness, I have so much tea I want to discuss. More New Jersey tea has come out. Jeez, we got to talk about it. And then, but I'm going to do some of that in the Patreon today, because I have my reasons. Lots of things happened with the Diddy case. I want to talk about the Diddy sex workers and gigolos that he hired. One in particular, Ash, really annoys me, and I'll tell you why. I think he's a horrific human being, that guy. And I feel like it's being made light what he did back after he was on the show Gigilo on Showtime. And so I have to tell you about him in particular, because if anything is going to come out of this, let's hope it's, not helping another guy who beat up a woman till she was dead look better than he actually is. So that's a thing I want to do. Also, some exciting things going on in Kim Kardashian's world. Need to talk to you about. And Marciano, who was called a sexual predator pretty much by Demi from Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, has now been alleged to have hooked up with another cast member from that show. Now, Marciano made an appearance on season 1 and 2 of Vanderpump Villa, and he's been compared to Jax. And he's now involved in another scandal. So he is essentially, allegedly hooked up with Demi, who's married, and another character named Jessie, who's married. And Sheena Shea seemed to confirm this on her podcast because she's good friends with Marciano. The problem, of course, is that both of these women are married. Oh, it's all such a small little world, isn't it? I also got some tea about kind of whether or not the things people are saying about Demi's husband, Brett, are true. I want to tell you some other highlights of Vanderpump Villa from episode 5 to 11 that I think you might want, if you haven't watched the series on Hulu. And can you guys believe they finally figured out what happened to Jimmy Hoffa? If you haven't heard this poor man, what they did to him, holy moly. I mean, his poor body. That's all I'm going to say. I have to tell you about this. I do have some listeners that are interested and invested in Jimmy Hoffa. If you guys don't know, he was a famous Teamster. The name of his Teamster organization was IBT, or the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, and he was allegedly also in bed with a lot of organized crime. He went missing in 1975 after he was kind of removed from his power position by Richard Nixon, and it's thought that he was whacked. He was confirmed legally dead in 1982. It's a really big mystery, for all these years. What is that? Nearly 50 years or something. And somehow it has now come out what happened to him. So I wanted to make sure I documented that on some show I did. Erika Jayne Girardi's sugar daddy may have broken the law to give Erika money, which has now come out. And so she's been implicated in yet another sort of fraudulent scheme. And it has to do with another elderly attorney. And then, of course, it came out that she hooked up with Jesse Solomon, who, I think they're a good match in a sense for a hookup because they're both narcissists. And I'm going to get into why I say that in today's show. Now, I'm not going to give this too much time. In no realm of the world do I believe that Taylor Swift's dad was the one who contacted Baldoni's attorney on Valentine's Day to tell him, and I quote, "A person whom Freeman declined to identify claimed that Lively's lawyer had demanded that Swift post a social media statement in support of Lively and warned that he could release 10 years of text between the two stars, according to Freeman's version of events. Swift's lawyer then accused Lively's lawyer of extortion and ended the call." I've heard this going around like crazy. First of all, you need to know that her dad was at one point one of the heads of Merrill Lynch. He still works as an advisor for Merrill Lynch under his own branding, which is the Swift brand. Okay? This guy has worked for Merrill Lynch for 40 years. Now, my dad worked for IBM for 26 years, okay? And he was high ranking in IBM. And I learned a lot about these types of guys. They are so pucker. And although he has been a champion for his daughter, he has been always very afraid for her safety in the environment of the celebrity that she is, with multiple fronts, like in politics when she's vocal about that, with predators looking for her because they think she's hot. A man at his degree of intelligence and breeding is never going to disclose a privileged conversation that happened with his daughter's attorney team that involved extortion and 10 years of DMs between Blake Lively and Taylor Swift. There's no world that that would happen, and it would never benefit his daughter in any way to do so. It also would be incredibly damaging to him as a financial advisor who has fiduciary duties and all of that and special regulations and training to ever have a conversation like that, which he knows could be demanded to be disclosed in court if actually this lawyer was able to pull off somehow this subpoena that he tried to get. This was so obviously a ruse that I can't say it anymore. I've said it a few times. I need you guys to think. There are people that are definitely trying to get sensationalized headlines out there to gain attention by saying pretty much whatever they think is going to get there. And they, rely on very kind of basic stuff that's out in the media, like, oh, look, he followed her to Nashville. Oh, he owns a percentage of her company, a small percentage. He cares about his daughters, protecting his daughter. This is so basic level thinking. You got to go to the next tier here. You got to go deeper. And if you go deeper, you just know this isn't happening. You know what I mean? It just isn't happening. Not for a guy who's a financial advisor for Merrill Lynch at the highest level. Just isn't happening. If this phone call truly existed with Baldoni's attorney, and I'm not saying the guy's lying because he would lose his license if it came out that it did, but I am saying that he designed everything that he filed knowing it wasn't going to probably go through. And it made no legal sense in his approach because he should have sent that subpoena and request for this salacious phone call information to Lively's team, not to Swift's team. It made no legal sense the way he did it. But what I was going to say is that, and I explained that last week in detail, but what I'm going to say is that this source had to have come from somebody who's like a publicist or somebody who, wouldn't mind their name coming out. Basically spilling all Taylor's very private privileged tea. I mean, who would that be? Not her attorneys, not a high-up team member. They never would dare. It has to be a low level, on the peripheral person that could benefit from getting this kind of publicity. And I frankly don't even know who that is. Like, who would want their name associated with betraying Taylor Swift at this level to leak an extortion attempt done attorney to attorney, which is privileged information, to Baldoni's attorney? Baldoni withdrew the subpoena, by the way, that he submitted to her, which was highly inappropriate, and the judge made him do it. Or at least that was the optics of how the attorney kind of created the situation. He's clever, this guy, but I will say maybe a little too clever. And I don't know if I believe this attorney, although people are in shock that he would risk his license and everything else to potentially be called out for something like this. But I don't know. I just don't see this happening. I don't think this is real. Also, I want to answer one more question before I move on. As far as the SZA performance with Beiber, quite a few people noticed that they were cuddling up on stage, seemingly highly inappropriate, given that, Hailey Bieber's with the baby, and why is he in Miami by himself doing this concert on Snooze, this surprise concert, and being so sexual, I guess, with her. And I kind of agree with that. I think it was inappropriate. I don't think that Justin Bieber has the same respect for Hailey Bieber as other people. Unfortunately, I think he sees Hailey as the mother of his child now and probably holds a high regard for her in that way. But I don't think he respects her on a professional basis whatsoever. And I don't think he respects her talent. So I think when he meets women that have a talent he does respect, who he thinks is like really phenomenal, he struggles to hold back like a secret attraction to those women. And I do think that that's what happened with Caesar, because I think he's attracted to her. What can I say? If it was my husband and I saw that performance and I was home with the baby, he would get an earful, believe me. Or maybe just get cut off for like a week and I wouldn't speak to him. Okay, I think those were what the Patreons wanted me to cover. Now let's get into the show.
Come on, bitch, let's go.
Let's quickly talk about Diddy. I've been listening to all the different coverages of Diddy, and I feel like there's just still so much data being left out. As you guys know, I'm overly thorough always. And so I wanted to do some of that in the free part of the show today because I feel like, it needs to be done given the situation with what happened with Cassie and Diddy and TMZ seemingly reporting that he's going to get off. Anyway, if this show gets too long with too many topics, I'll put them in the description of the audio, even though I don't normally do that on these types of shows. Let's start off with the prosecution. What they did was they announced in a particular exhibit a bunch of photos of sex workers. And this was back in the beginning of the week, okay? And the exhibit name was 2A-628. Now, TMZ immediately dropped the photographs of these men with names underneath them, which I happened to notice. Oddly, I went to click on that page because before it was a bunch of images of men with their names underneath it, at least what TMZ knew at the time. Well, that page went bye-bye and is gone now. So then I went to the Shade Room because I know they were really covering detail on this, and they at least had documented it before it went goodbye. Well, it turns out the reason that it went goodbye is that there was a sex worker that had his name listed on it with a picture, and it was the sex worker Jules, who appeared on Gigilo. But it turns out that Jules is saying that he wasn't doing freak-offs with Diddy, and he doesn't even know how his name and his picture got in the prosecution's evidence that TMZ then republished. And it was very damaging to his reputation because he's like, I didn't do this freak-off stuff. Like, I don't even know what they're talking about. More on that later. But this is why TMZ pulled it down. Now, what makes this all the more difficult on TMZ potentially is that the guys that, thank goodness, the Shade Room happened to write down was Tony, who was white or Hispanic with a bald look and beard, and he was presented in the government exhibit. Greg, a black male depicted in the government exhibit. Jake, who appeared to be a white or Hispanic gigolo. Johnny, a black male. Jules, a male unknown race. Brian, a black male. Ash, a white or Hispanic male. Actually, I think he's Asian, but that's what the Shade Room thought. And then Skylar, a white or Hispanic male. There was also 3 unidentified black men and 2 unidentified white or Hispanic men. This is coming from the Shade Room. And then there was some more famous gigolos. Sheree the Punisher Hayes, who actually was an ex-reality star on the Showtime show, The Gigilos. Jonathan Odie, P. Diddy's alleged sex slave. Jonathan also shot up the Trump's National Doral, which is close to Miami hotel, I guess, because he didn't like Trump, so he was trying to make some sort of point. Anyway, he ended up getting arrested for that, and then he has a famous police tape, which goes into huge depth of how he was hired by Diddy to do freak-offs, and watched the tape a few times now. I don't want to go into too much detail, but essentially, he did whatever Cassie and Diddy wanted, and then he became friends with them, and I guess things went awry when he started realizing that Cassie was getting abused. He didn't want to really do it anymore. And so he took a videotape without Diddy and Cassie's knowledge, of what they were doing to use it as blackmail. And it got back to Diddy and Cassie. And then Diddy was going to, I guess, threaten to kill him through Cassie. In a way, Cassie talks about an intimidating message to somebody to get to him because he's got this video. And then then Diddy ends up getting in touch with Jonathan Odie, and he ends up giving him some sort of an NDA to sign for $5 million, of which he spends about $900,000 buying rundown properties in the Miami area to flip and rent and make passive income. But then he loses his mind, probably on Lord knows steroids or whatever else he was doing at that time, and he shoots up the hotel. He's arrested and he gets thrown in jail, and he serves jail for quite a few years. I think he is still in jail. I did find his inmate record. I think it was like a year and a half ago, but I haven't looked at it recently. Okay, but he was in jail for sure. And then we've got the guy that I really wanted to tell you about that I just think is like horrific. And then there was Daniel Phillip. And Danielle did quite a few different freak-offs with the group. He testified. He also said he stopped doing them when he saw Cassie get dragged by the hair and had a bottle of baby oil or something tossed at her really hard. He said he didn't feel comfortable. And also all these escorts that I've named so far were getting anywhere from $700 or $800 up front to $6,000 or $7,000 on the back end if they, did sex with Cassie and stayed a while. All of the freak-offs, I guess, Cassie kind of organized things. Both Cassie and Diddy paid the sex workers. Cassie was generally the one who found these sex workers using Craigslist and other online methodologies. Diddy was mostly trying to hide who he was, but a few people figured out who he was because they saw his name on the hotel TV screen. He forgot about that, or, he let his guard down here and there and they figured it out, but he'd often be wearing a bandana on his face or a mask. Cassie would wear a wig. There was also fantasy playing happening. All in all, there were 13 photos released, some of which look like actors, honestly, more like that than sex workers. And to me, when I looked at the photos, all races and colors and cultures were present. I don't think there was one particular type for Diddy or Cassie, honestly, from looking at the photographs. But the one gigolo that really I wanted to talk to you guys about today is Ash. And his real name is Akshaya Kubiak, a.k.a. Gigolo Showtime star Ash Armand from season 3 on for a few seasons. He was marketed as the peaceful Zen gigolo. And he's currently in prison for 20 years, hopefully the whole time, because he murdered a woman with his bare hands. Now, the reason he didn't get life was because his defense was that he was completely high on shrooms at the time and he didn't know what he was doing. He blacked out and he killed her during a blackout. He thinks that she attacked him. He, being not in his right mind, attacked her back. But some of the things that he says around his crime don't really add up when you have the details surrounding what went down with this woman. The woman, by the way, was only 29 years old, beautiful and Indian in descent, and her name was Herline Kaur Dulé, but I'm saying that probably incorrectly because it's Indian. I did try to find a way to pronounce it, but I couldn't. Like a guide. But here's the thing, right? Ash made this whole thing about how he comes to his senses and he's, even trying to give CPR when the ambulance arrives because he calls 911 himself at 10 in the morning and is like, oh my gosh, I've done something horrible and I'm going to turn myself in and I'm so sorry. And he seems like he's following a script that, he really kind of was out of it and then this happens, right? But the thing is that number one, he's not on any crazy drug that you would think like PCP or something where you really lose your mind. In fact, in her system at the time, once they did the autopsy, they found she had MDMA, psilocybin, caffeine, and alcohol in her system. Now, MDMA is ecstasy. Psilocybin would be from shrooms of some sort or hallucinogenic, and the rest, you know what that is. So none of that stuff makes you go that nuts to have these types of injuries. Let me read this to you. The full extent of DeLay's injuries weren't known until the forensic medical pathologist released her autopsy. Her body was covered in contusions. Her mouth was pulverized, her gums shredded, her teeth were broken, and fragments of them were found in her stomach. Her tongue, eye globes, scalp, and brain, esophagus, arms, legs, and nose had hemorrhaged. She had aspirated some of her blood into her lungs. She had fractured hyoid, her neck bone, and a broken rib. It was determined that the cause of death was blunt force trauma with strangulation as a contributing factor. And when asked when was the last time he spoke to her, he said nothing. And when they said what happened, ultimately, when they were with him in his presence and not on the phone anymore, he said, she attacked me and I attacked her. Now, allegedly, this woman was a client of his in the beginning. She seemed to suffer with some mental health issues in the sense that some people believed she lied about having certain ailments, like she made it seem like she had cancer in multiple places to different people, different stories, and none of that really seemed to be true based on what her family said later and some other friends said. And she also allegedly had like a heart issue, but maybe she didn't. She moved to Las Vegas for academic reasons. She joined a gym and she became more and more social. She got better and better looking, but then she seemed to retreat in some ways. But there was also a lot of different testimony to do with her personality. Like, one person said she seemed to have like a dark cloud over her one day, but her family spoke to her and she was happy and fine. So what does this say to me? A lot of druggies around this girl. And remember, this guy was on steroids. And when he started taking steroids, his entire body and mental state changed. Now, steroids can make you very angry. And I'd say mixing it with these other things that he was obviously on, especially if there was cocaine involved, could really agitate someone to get so angry over something that they lose their temper and potentially become super, super violent. That I could see. The wrong dosage of testosterone or something to make his body bulk up, and he happened to take a dose this day that he decided to do this spiritual drug retreat with her, because, by the way, that's what he said it was. He said that after she may or may not have been a client of his, because they did find money, for him. I think he probably was crying to her about his bills and she was a friend and she offered to pay rather than a client, because they did look at her bank statements and they didn't find any regular payments to him. So I don't think, she was as much of a client at 29, very pretty, that they made it seem like. I do think that, he cried, she paid money to help him. And that's, where this rumor gets started, unfortunately. They were friends. He slipped into her DMs on Instagram and started convincing her to want to hang out with him. Anyway, the guy's obviously incredibly dysfunctional. But here's what really pissed me off about this crime, probably more than anything, is he cries on the phone that he doesn't remember doing any of this crap. And he says all these things. But here's the truth. He's caught lying several times. Let me read this to you. There was a struggle, Kubiak told the 911 operator the next morning. I temporarily lost my mind. Kubiak told the dispatcher that Dulé had had a heart attack and that she'd had a history of cancer. Now, this part is correct in the sense that she said she had cancer and she said to other people she had heart issues, although different stories around this. Some people didn't believe it to be true because she changed her stories a few times. That's neither here nor there. Just keep with me. Clark County Fire Captain Darren Lutz received the call a little while later, sending him to Kubiak's condo at 8463 Blackstone Ridge Court. Lutz and his 3 crew members raced up the stairs to the primary bedroom, and there was Kubiak pressing down on Dulé's chest, his phone by his side. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, intoned the 911 operator as they coached him through his CPR, according to court documents. But what Lutz and his team saw when they arrived hardly look like a heart attack. Lutz took note of Dulay's black and blue and swollen face, blood surrounding her matted hair. Her ear was a giant bruise. Her body was covered in candle wax, as was the open suitcase that lay at her feet. 2 candles stood near her body, their surfaces marked with bloody handprints. Near the suitcase was a black shirt and a ceramic statue, both spattered with blood. Lutz ordered Kubiak to step out of the way so his team could take over. When was the last time she was awake or talking, a paramedic asked Kubiak. He didn't answer. This is Ash. How did she get the black eye? And the facial injuries, Lutz asked. She attacked me and I attacked her, Kubiak said. Lutz then told Kubiak to go downstairs and wait for the ambulance. Lutz followed to keep an eye on him and make sure he didn't flee. Soon after they got downstairs, the ambulance showed up. After other group of paramedics entered his condo, Kubiak turned to Lutz and said, "Is she still alive?" Lutz didn't answer him directly. "I was trying to keep it light," he said. He told Kubiak they were going to transport Dulé to a hospital. Kubiak said, "I did this. Are the police coming?" And then Lutz said, "They normally come to this type of situation. When the police got here, I'll surrender," Kubiak told him, according to the grand jury indictment. Dulé was never transported to the hospital. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Homicide detectives were sent to the house. Now listen to this. And they found blood spattered inside the washing machine and bloody clothes inside it. On the bathroom counter were blood stains that had been watered down as if an attempt to wash them away, and a blood-soaked towel. There was the appearance of cleanup, is the best way to put it, said a detective in the grand jury indictment. A sheath knife hung on the wall to the left of Kubiak's bed. Detectives found a pocket knife too. Dulé's backpack was leaning against the couch. Mushrooms were in the refrigerator. When police inspected Kubiak for injuries, all they found was a small cut on the middle finger of his left hand and blood in his ear, which they assumed was from performing CPR on Dulé. So where the hell did she attack him? He ended up pleading guilty to voluntary manslaughter, and surprisingly, he was only sentenced to 8 to 20 years. Anyway, the way they talk about this guy is like it was a blip or something. I really was like, no, we need to really get into the nitty-gritty. Whenever this man's name is mentioned, it needs to be called out what this man really did here, okay? Not like make it look lightly like, oh, I was really high and I didn't know what I was doing. I call bullshit on that one. Anyway, he got away with what he got away with. But the irony of him being brought in the Diddy case, oh, it's so good. All right, now Jules, who was another gigolo that got called out early on by TMZ for being one of the guy's pictures that got shown on the in the exhibit I talked to you about earlier. He was supposedly the gigolo that was with Diddy and Cassie at the Intercontinental Hotel, where the whole big beating we saw in the video happened, that the security guard was called, etc. Well, he was really pissed because it turns out he wasn't the escort with Diddy and Cassie that witnessed all this stuff, meaning, or, participated in the fun. And he shouldn't have his photo as part of the 13 pictures because he actually wasn't, he's saying, involved or there, and he doesn't understand how he ended up in the prosecutor's evidence. And he contacted the Daily Mail outraged. "This has sucked for me. My name has been brought into this. I have never had an interaction with Diddy and or Cassie that included or where I witnessed violence, illegal drugs, contracting for sexual services acts, prostitution, or the transportation of any person from anywhere to anywhere whatsoever," he insisted. He said, "I hung out with literally hundreds of celebrities on a regular basis." He was on a reality show for Showtime called Gigilo. Could be through that, or it could be that, there's a lot of celebrities that use prostitutes. Big shocker. But never in one of the now notorious freak-offs did he participate, he said. He also found it very unusual that although he's exhibited in the prosecution's evidence against Diddy, that no attorney or authority ever contacted him, because he would have easily just told them that. And he could prove it, he said. Now, he's not shy, this guy. I like his last name, Jules Armani. God, with just a few different decisions, he could have been the designer Armani. Who knows? Okay, so he wrote a book in 2011 called The Tao of Gigolo. Now, this is because, of course, he was on the TV show with Ash. But he wasn't in the freak-offs with Diddy based on what he's saying. Now, unusually, after this really robust career as a gigolo, he decided to move to Saipan, which is a small island in the Pacific, to start a new life in cryptocurrency and also tech. Why not? Sure. But to be fair, the way that TMZ talks about these images where they were presented in the exhibits, in the evidence of the prosecution, that's not TMZ's fault that they identified him, but he seems to think that they maybe took some liberties with this. Again, unfortunate because, of course, Levine is doing a podcast with Garagos, who's consulting as a legal person in the case of Diddy because his daughter's working for the defense team. A lot of conflict of interest in this reporting, therefore. This is what he said. This TMZ bullshit and the lack of professionalism or competence from the prosecution has damaged my reputation. Well, Mr. Armani, I'm not sure that's the case, but I smell a civil litigation coming, so it's probably good for you to say that. So by now, you've heard the harrowing story of Cassie's mom, who gave $20,000 to Diddy. She testified to make him, stop extorting Cassie with all this pornography he had taken of her over the years in their relationship. And Diddy, unusually, after making the mom feel like she had to pay it, essentially gave her money back to her. She took a mortgage out on the house, so he had some sort of remorse regarding this, or I guess he wouldn't have done that. He just wanted to scare Cassie. Maybe it was for optics, and then he felt like a shit for doing it. Then we move on, and of course, the big moment, Kid Cudi takes the stand. Kid Cudi, to me, his name should be Cudi. Like, you got cooties. I don't know why, but Cudi, it's like cute. It's obviously based on his last name, but it really bothers me because it reminds me of like crud, Cudi. I don't know why. Anyway, it's good for his career because everyone's asking Cudi now to come out with a new album. Allegedly, he was super nervous going in, sucking down cigarettes right before he went into court. And then I really liked this guy's coverage of Cudi's testimony. Let me play it for you. This is You Won't Believe Me that's literally his handle, but let me play it for you. Hold on.
Yet because Kid Cudi swore under oath that Diddy broke into his house, messed with his dog, bombed his Porsche with a molotov cocktail, and admitted that Cassie Ventura may have been playing both sides. Scott Cudi, also known as Kid Cudi, told the court that in 2011, Diddy broke into his Hollywood Hills home, and when Cudi returned, his holiday gifts were ripped open and his dog was locked in the bathroom, visibly shaken. Later, Cudi confronted Diddy and said, "You broke into my house and mess with my dog. I don't want to talk to you." And then things escalated. In January of 2012, Cudi got a call from his dog sitter. His Porsche was on fire. The convertible top had been sliced open and the interior was scorched. Authorities later confirmed it had been hit with a Molotov cocktail. Cudi told the court that when he sat down with Diddy after the explosion, he asked, "What are we going to do about my car?" Diddy replied, "I don't know what you're talking about." Cudi told the jury, "I knew he was lying." And all of this came back to Cassie Ventura. Cudi admitted they dated briefly in 2011. He said they ended it for safety because the drama was getting dangerous. "I knew Sean Combs was violent," Cudi testified. Then came the twist. During the cross-examination, Diddy's lawyer asked, "Ventura was living two different lives. Is that true?" "Yes." "You both were played. True?" "Yes." Cudi admitted he was blindsided when he learned Cassie and Diddy were still together during their fling. He said, "I was in love with her." In court, Diddy appeared tense and didn't make eye contact with Cudi once. At one point, a fan was even kicked out for flashing a handwritten sign to support Diddy. Earlier, a hotel manager testified that Diddy left luxury suites destroyed with candle wax and baby oil. The room smelled so strong they had to spray air freshener in the hallway, and the hotel charged him an extra $1,000 every time because of this.
Now, another thing that he said, which really got people's attention, is when the prosecutor asked Cudi, "What did Capricorn Clark tell you?" who was an assistant for both, I guess, Diddy and also Cudi at one point or another. And then Cudi said, "Sean Combs and an affiliate forced her into a car to come to my house. I called the police." So I guess what happened is that Capricorn was threatened that she would end up being hurt or something if she didn't give Diddy access to Cudi's house to do all these like awful things to him in some way or intimidate him. And that she was allegedly kidnapped, I guess, for a period of time in all of this by Diddy, forced to do it in a way. So that is, I guess, playing into the mobster aspect of the prosecution of the racketeering element of the charges. And then Kid addresses the fans after he testifies all this.
Hey guys, so I just want to say, man, I've been seeing all the love and support, and I just want to say thank you so much, man. People have been hitting me up the past week, just checking in, and even today, and it really means a lot to me, man. You guys are the best. I love y'all. It's a stressful situation. I'm glad it's behind me. And yeah, I love y'all, man. Big love. Go stream Neverland.
Now, in between all of this, there's some forensic, people that were interviewed about like where did the hard drive come from and how do we know it's valid and all this stuff, which is kind of technical arguments. So then Mila Morales, who was a makeup artist for Cassie for years, was testifying, and we can't hear what she said, but I would assume it's something very similar to what I'm about to play you. For the full scoop, join the Dishing Drama Dana Patreon. The link is in this audio description. It's only $6 a month, and you'll get the best information and tea about the things you care about, and even the things you don't know you care about. What are you waiting for?